This episode has been brought to you by our super generous supporters on Patreon. Well, it's that time of year again when ghostly beings rise up from their graves and haunt our towns and streets and dreams. Or do they? Good Stuff producer Sam Grant examines our search for and long history of belief in the paranormal.
The idea of or belief in ghosts has been around, well, pretty much since the beginning of recorded history. In pre-literate societies, a belief in animism was prevalent, which attached spirits and life essences to inanimate objects. This and ancestor worship were universally common in pre-pagan societies. In most forms of ancestor worship, restless ghosts were distinguished from their more benevolent counterparts by being perceived as starving and wanting to return to their living bodies. There was often ritual sacrifice or the leaving of food and drink involved to pacify or feed these starving spirits, as well as magical rituals intended to banish them from the realm of the living for good. The wispy and translucent appearance of ghosts was present and described through art found in these pre-pagan societies as well. This is believed to originate from the belief that the spirit within a physical body is present in its breath, which in colder climates was physically visible. Iterations of these rituals, beliefs, and appearances have persisted throughout human history up until today. In fact, a Harris poll from 2014 found that 42% of Americans say they believe in the existence of ghosts. In the past 10 or 15 years, there have even been a slew of reality TV shows based on hunting down and proving the existence of these paranormal specters in a scientific manner. This type of thing isn't exactly new though, and the practice of trying to prove the existence of ghosts with the aid of science has actually been going on for quite a long time now. Philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment during the 18th century championed scientific method and reason. This movement was largely influenced by the scientific revolution, which began before it in the mid-16th century. During the Age of Enlightenment, philosophers of the day began the first major underminings of religion and superstitious beliefs, and closely preceded a worldwide scientific revolution thereafter. This worldwide revolution was in part due to the popularization of science through a more literate society, which now had the means to disseminate scientific ideas through printed mediums and new forms of communication. While this did result in a more educated and scrutinizing worldwide population, there was a side effect that these philosophers didn't quite expect. This was the marriage of both the scientific reasoning they were trying to promote and the superstitions and mystic beliefs they were attempting to eradicate. The first widely known instance of this came from the studies of a man named Franz Mesmer. In an early experiment, he attempted to treat a woman suffering from hysteria by giving her a solution containing iron and attaching magnets to different parts of her body. She was briefly cured of her symptoms and reported that she had felt a strange fluid flowing through her body during the procedure. Mesmer was convinced that some sort of energy transfer from himself had affected his patient, and that the magnets had not done the work on their own. This led him to abandoning the magnets entirely and practicing what became the early stages of hypnosis to purportedly cure various ailments instead. He ended up accumulating a number of followers who called themselves magnetizers or mesmerizers. These followers took his practices a step further, and the idea of clairvoyance was born. That is, the idea that through iterations of Mesmer's techniques, one could intuit things about an object or person through extrasensory perception. Paranormally, this manifested itself in so-called clairvoyance, claiming to be able to sense or communicate with spirits and ghosts. The largest movement involving this clairvoyance began in New York in 1848. Two sisters, Maggie and Kate Fox, reported that their house was haunted by a poltergeist they could communicate with by tapping on pieces of wood. News of this spread rapidly, and their older sister took their newfound fame and established a business, promoting their talents in her own as a clairvoyant medium, conducting seances for wealthy and influential people. The early followers of these practices spread the word, which culminated in a movement called spiritualism. Spiritualism purported that the existence of spirits and ghosts could be empirically quantified by science, and used evidence such as early photography, tests using electric fields, and magnetism to prove that these spirits could manifest themselves in human bodies and control them, thus allowing us to communicate with the dead. By 1897, it was said that spiritualism had over 8 million practitioners across the US and Europe. We can see the manifestations of the science used in the first explorations of paranormal activity in terms of the ghost hunters of today. Modern ghost hunters use Ghostbuster-type devices such as EMF meters to measure electromagnetic changes in the atmosphere. They also use all-in-one devices like ghost boxes to both scan radio waves for possible otherworldly transmissions and also see sudden changes in temperature, which they take as evidence of ghostly presences. Most of these so-called detections, however, can easily be explained as naturally occurring phenomena. In fact, Canadian researchers have linked the presence of strong electromagnetic fields monitored by ghost hunters to hallucinations and feelings of unease. The same can be said about infrasound, or sounds just beyond the human capacity to hear them that modern ghost hunters commonly monitor. Sounds around 19 Hz can even vibrate the human eyeball, causing dizziness and distortion of perception. But are ghosts real? Try as people might throughout history, there has been no empirical evidence that says this is so. Coming full circle, British physicist Brian Cox claims that the Large Hadron Collider can give us proof that ghosts don't exist. As the largest particle accelerator in the world, the Large Hadron Collider allows us to study the tiniest building blocks of the universe. Cox argues that if there were some ghostly material out there, and especially one controlling our bodies in any physical way, such as the way a spiritualist might believe, it would be present in the research they have done thus far. But it most definitely isn't. Some argue, conversely, that there are particles and phenomena not detected yet even with the technology of today. From the first marriage of technology and the paranormal, we have been looking for proof of the existence of ghosts and spirits, but none has surfaced. Clearly there are those of us who believe in ghosts and the supernatural, but infallible evidence of this continues to elude us.
So what do you think? Are ghosts real or not, even if we haven't proven their existence? Have you ever seen a ghost? Are you a ghost? Let us know in the comments. And if you'd like to support what we do here, consider supporting us on Patreon. Happy Halloween.